Hello, my name is Jeanette McCarter. I'm with Housing Problem Solvers Company, and I want to talk to you today about foreclosure. Foreclosure is when you've purchased a home and you have a mortgage on that, and that could be a condo, townhouse, or actually a home, single family home, and you get behind on the mortgage, right? You can't pay it, and the process begins of the bank taking the house back. Okay, now you need to know if you're in a judicial or non-judicial foreclosure state. For example, Illinois, Michigan, I think those are judicial foreclosure states. Georgia, non-judicial foreclosure state. So you need to know what type of state you're actually living in terms of foreclosure. So let's start with judicial foreclosure state. If you're in a judicial foreclosure state, you have considerably more time to rectify your problem with your mortgage than in a non-judicial foreclosure state. Because in a judicial foreclosure state, the bank that holds the mortgage or whomever who holds the mortgage has to take you to court in order to get the property back. In a non-judicial foreclosure state, the bank doesn't have to take you to court. The bank gives you, usually the whole process will take about 6 months in a non-judicial foreclosure state, and that's if you're not trying to negotiate or talk to them and kind of work things out. In a judicial foreclosure state, the bank has to basically sue you to get the house back, okay? Because they cannot proceed in that process without court involvement. That's the two biggest things you need to know when you're buying a home is what kind of state you live in. Is it judicial or is it non-judicial? Okay. Now, so the process proceeds with them after the first 90 days, they're sending you what is called a demand letter, okay? And that demand letter basically says, we're demanding that you bring your mortgage current, okay? Now, at that time, when that occurs, what you could do is you could ask for what is called a loan modification. And what that means is whatever those payments are that you're in the rear, they can be added to either the end of the loan or they can be added to your payments going forward, okay? You have to financially qualify for a loan modification, okay? So they have to see all your income and everything. Now, it doesn't change the mortgage rate, okay? It will change the payments because those payments that you're in the rear, those payments will have to be added back into that loan somewhere, okay? Either it'll start immediately if you say, okay, I'm 3 months behind, but I can start adding a little more to my payment each month to satisfy those 3 payments, or you can say, is it possible to add this back into the end of the loan? So those are kind of your options with a loan modification, okay? Now, if in fact you can't do the loan modification, you can't financially qualify for a loan modification, all right, then depending on where you live, you can potentially file bankruptcy, okay? And I would advise you to speak with a bankruptcy attorney to stop the foreclosure process. That's the other thing you possibly could do. Now, if all those fail, those situations fail, then what happens is the bank, again, in a judicial foreclosure state, they file the lawsuit against you, and then you have to file an answer, which is what I always advise people whenever the court notifies you or of anything, you need to file an answer and you need to respond. So then what happens is, in a judicial foreclosure state, you respond back to that lawsuit from the bank in order to them wanting to seize that property back. All right, so you answered. Now you go before a judge And if you haven't been able to pay them or reach some type of agreement, then that judge will allow that bank to proceed in the foreclosure process. Typically, in a judicial foreclosure state, you get a lot more time than in what is called a non-judicial foreclosure state, because in a non-judicial foreclosure state, they don't have to sue you for the house back. Okay, they'll typically try to work out a loan modification with you. If that doesn't work, then they just continue on with that process. At each time, trying to notify you, trying to work something out. So if nothing can be worked out, then that bank will go in and sell that property, advertise the property. They have to advertise it, I believe, for 30 days. And then it is sold on the courthouse steps. And I know in Georgia, it's typically the first Tuesday of the month. Okay. So that process also occurs in non-judicial foreclosure states, where they basically sell the property on the courthouse steps. Now, if there are no buyers at that time, then what happens is the bank takes the house back from you, right? They take the house back, and then what they do is they give you money. They either evict you, or they do what is called cash for keys, where they give you a certain amount of money to move out of the house. All right. Now, the foreclosure process is devastating, okay? Particularly if you've lived in your house for a number of years and then now you can't pay. It's a devastating experience. However, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. You can buy another house, okay? So just because you've lost that one does not mean that you can't get another house in the future, okay? So you typically have to wait roughly about 2 years or 3 years, depending on the state and depending on the lender that you approach, because you're going to have to go through that whole mortgage process again. Then you can buy you another house. So the way it looks, if you're going through foreclosure, is that it's devastating right now. However, you can at a later date get another house. Now, let's talk a little bit about that whole bankruptcy process. What could potentially happen, or a step you could potentially take, is to declare bankruptcy, okay? Now, if you have no income, you're probably going to be filing a Chapter 7, okay? A 7 means I'm done, I'm walking away from everything. Everything gets wiped out in a Chapter 7. If you can repay, right, then you need to file a Chapter 13. A Chapter 13 says we're going to put a plan together, and it may be roughly anywhere from 1 to 5 years in order to pay back this debt. Okay, so you're going to have payments coming out through the bankruptcy court, payments that are made through the bankruptcy court, where they're paying the bills. So hopefully this video can help you understand that whole process. And again, you can buy another house after foreclosure. Again, you can get another house. You just have to get your income back, and then you can buy another house. Thank you.